Okay, let's do our prayer for student. You might be wondering what Mrs. Ferguson claimed. She didn't have glasses, but there's glasses sitting here. These are Mrs. Clark's glasses. Yeah, I don't want to look through these. I'll be very nauseated later. I tried, and that's not a good thing. Christ my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work, for to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. All right, we are returning to depressing poetry today. And next week. All right, this is on page 169. And I need to give you some information about this poem to make sense of it. First of all, the title, Dulce et decorum est, is Latin. And it is the first part of a line from the Roman poet Horace, who wrote about in the time of Augustus, the Emperor Augustus. And Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. It is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. It's sort of a rousing soldier advice. It's good and fitting to lay down your life for your country. Horace wrote this 2,000 years ago, and it is apparently inscribed on the memorial amphitheater at Arlington National Cemetery, where they buried the soldiers in Arlington, Virginia. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, because all of these people died for their country. Fine, except World War I comes along. And World War I was awful. War is always awful. But in World War I, we have, starting in the Civil War, but really by World War I, we have weapons that can do a lot of damage to a lot of people quickly. And they used gas. They used poison gas. They do not, to the best of my knowledge, use poison gas anymore because it was so horrific that after World War I, everybody just kind of made a decision that that's not cool. We don't gas people in war. It's utterly inhumane. But they did in World War I. Wilfred Owen, our poet, was in World War I. And he saw things that he really wished he had not seen and experienced horrible things, as people often do when they go to war. And then he came home on leave, and even while he was in the trenches a little bit, he wrote poetry. He came home briefly on leave, and then they sent him back, and he died. He died in World War I. And he's known for writing World War I related poetry about his experience. And this is the most famous of his poems. So and again, 100 years ago when this was written, everybody knew that quote because everybody read Horace in school, because everybody read Latin. Everybody knew Latin well enough to be reading the Roman authors. That was what school was. So everybody, if you put that on there, it was like, oh yeah, Horace. And now we have to have it explained to us because in 100 years we've lost education. And we're trying to get it back again. But we, like I said, they knew. It wasn't some secret code. Everybody would have thought instantly of the rest of the quote when they read this. But well, let's just read the poem and find out what he thinks of that saying. Bent double, like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on blood-shod. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas, gas, quick boys, an ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil's sick of sin. If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. My friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children, ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. Does Wilfred Owen think it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country?
No.
What does he think it's like?
He almost thinks it's a lie.
He thinks that that's a lie, but what is it like to die for one's country? What is the experience like?
Terrible. Horrible.
It haunts you in your dreams. He describes for us what happens when someone doesn't get their gas mask on in time. It's an ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets on, but there's still someone yelling. And I look at him, dim through the misty panes and thick green light, the green smoke of the gas and the panes, the fogged up panes of the gas mask. I see him drowning. Basically because it's affecting his lungs and he's like drowning in his own blood. It's awful. So, you know, in World War II, we had movie cameras. And you could go, maybe you know this, you know, there are no TVs. So people went to the movies a lot. It was cheap and it was entertaining. And you would go and there'd be multiple things. Like there'd be a main movie and there'd be maybe a newsreel, right? And they'd have footage from the war. And there might be a Three Stooges short or something like that, or a cartoon, Looney Tunes, something like that. So you get your money's worth. But people would see images from World War II. World War I, movie cameras existed, but they weren't. They were just pioneer stage, right? They weren't taking them overseas and filming stuff. Nobody knew what it was like except the people that were there. And Wilfred Owen tried to paint us a picture. It's not a pretty picture. How do we feel about that? Do we, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. It's honorable to be a soldier and lay down your life for your country if it is required of you. That's one way. Versus, it's awful. Who would want to do that? It is torture to die for your country, die horribly like that. Which one do we think is better or more true or more correct or more desirable to think? There's no right answer here, so don't worry.
It'd be more desirable to think that it wasn't honored.
Why might it be more desirable, Gabriel? What might be good about believing? He calls it the old lie. But what might be good about believing that it's an honor? We're going to, instead of sweet and fitting, we'll just call it an honor. It's an honor to die for your country.
I mean, it has to be done, so they have to have people who want to do it.
Okay.
I think it's both.
But like,
Honor doesn't contradict horribly.
it doesn't, does it? So we just came out of Easter weekend, right? The tremendous torture together with the greatest gift that could be bestowed on mankind, life, eternal life, but horror, right? And they're this, and in the same act, in the same event. Is there a danger if we take one or the other? Like it's amazing, amazing to die for my country, or it's a horror to be shunned at all costs. What's the danger of taking this one? It's honorable to die for one's country without thinking that it might be horrible. What's the risk?
Because if it's like a useless war, you could just get like thousands and maybe even possibly millions of people dead for almost no reason.
Yeah, because everybody wants to go fight because it's so honorable and glorious. You know, they say, I've read, that at the beginning of the Civil War, I think we talked about this a little bit, people signed up left and right, especially Northerners, because it's a free tour. You know, we get to travel a little bit and hang out in the camp with our buddies. I don't know, make s'mores. And it was not what they expected. So to be, I would say sanguine about it, to be overly optimistic. We're going to go and it's going to be awesome and everybody's going to just cheer for us, and that's all there is to war. Now, you kind of alluded to this, what's the danger of it's all a lie? It's not honorable at all. It's just horror. Nobody wants to go. Everybody's afraid, or they intentionally don't go because there's no honor at all. It's a lie that there's honor. But like Jonathan said, there's both. Because we have lots of time, because you've only read half the book and there's a limit to what we can talk about. When I was a little girl, there was a popular song. I think I told the Wednesday kids about this song. But Billy, Don't Be a Hero. Did we talk about this song? Nobody knows this song, right? Billy, Don't Be a Hero. No, this is from 1975. You don't know this. Bo Donaldson. Okay, I know this because it's in my car and I listen to it on a regular basis. So I really liked this song, and it's a story song. You can Google it if you want to. Billy, Don't Be a Hero. And it's more the old lie, right? So here's what happens in this song. And I'm doing this because I've thought a lot about this, listening to it as an adult and how I felt about it as a kid. And I didn't understand it really fully as a kid. I mean, I understood the plot, but not the ending. So the soldiers are marching through town. Remember, this is 75, so, you know, the Vietnam War has wound down, but there are lots of vets fresh home from Vietnam at this time period. So soldiers, and they're trying to get recruits. And it says, and Billy was eager to join them. And with a hand upon his shoulder, his young and lovely fiancée, from where I stood, I saw she was crying, and through her tears I heard her say, and the chorus is, Billy, don't be a hero, don't be a fool with your life. Billy, don't be a hero, come back and make me your wife. And as he started to go, she said, Billy, keep your head low. Billy, don't be a hero, come back to me. That's the chorus. So they go, and it says they're trapped on a hillside, and the sergeant says, I need a volunteer to get some extra men, and Billy's hand was up in a moment, forgetting all the words she said, and then they sing the chorus again. And the last paragraph was, I heard his fiancée got a letter that told how Billy died that day. The letter said that he was a hero. She should be glad he died that way. I heard she threw the letter away. That's the end. They don't even sing the chorus again. And it's just like drums, like marching drums at the end. So it's little, I'm listening to this, and first of all, I'm like, why would she throw the letter away? She's mad, but wouldn't she want, that as a keepsake? Because I was like 8 years old, 9 years old. But as I've thought about it, I've thought about the message of that song. Again, post-Vietnam. Does that sound like a pro-war or an anti-war song to you? It's definitely not a dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. She throws it away. I'm ticked off because what a stupid idiot. He volunteered for this special mission and got himself killed, and now I'm alone. And it really, to me now, when I listen to it 50 years later, heavens, 50 years later, I think, wow, that Vietnam especially changed how we feel about soldiering a little bit, and so I can see good in both. It's an honor, but I can see being realistic. It might be horrific to die for your country. Anyway, if you're interested in World War I at all, if that's a thing for you, look up Wilfred Owen. The poetry of Wilfred Owen, but it's not a very pleasant look at World War I, as you can see. And I would love it. I know it's very depressing, but if you'd read it at least one more time, and just think about it. Think about how do you don't answer this question. This is a thought question. What is your opinion of wars? Like, if you were drafted and asked to go, are you dulce at the quartermast? Are you, it's horrific? Are you somewhere in between? Are you a little bit of both? And what should the Christian response to it be when we're asked to fight, when a Christian is asked to fight? Anyway, that's for you to ponder. Okay. We are going to squint our way through the next section of Crime and Punishment. I'm so ticked off. Can't even explain to you how upset I am. But let's start out with this. Last week, we tried to figure out why in the world he would axe murder somebody. This is a good question to ask. And what are some of the reasons we came up with last week? What were some of the reasons we met at the beginning?
He thought it was moral because the lady was so evil.
I'm ridding the world of just scum who abuses her own sister and everybody else. So she doesn't deserve to live. This is a reason. I'm not saying it's a good reason, but it's a reason. What other motives might he have had? And not in what you read this week, but last week. Money. How'd that work out for him?
Not great.
Very poorly, considering he hid it under a rock and never even looked at it. Was not helpful at all. But, again, I can overlook that. Because like I said, I know how these things work. You don't go spending the cash right away because it draws attention to you. You lay low. You buy a few things here and there. This is how you do it when you steal a bunch of money. Don't do it, though.
How do you know that?
I watch a lot of that sort of movie and read that sort of book, apparently. So poverty, she's a louse. And also, how is his health?
Not the best.
He's not okay. And he's not been okay for some time because Nastasia, the serving girl, comes in, and like, oh, are you all sleeping again? What, do you never go anywhere? Do you never do anything? And he's just been laying on that couch in that tiny room. And then we know he is ill or becoming ill because he after he commits the murder, he downright has a fever and he's not well. He's unconscious for part of the time, passing out. So he's physically not well or
He's not right.
not okay up there. Now, so that's what we had last week. This week, did we find another potential motive?
In good or bad?
A motive for kill, so bad, I guess. I mean, a reason he did it. Did we run across another potential reason?
Something about Napoleon.
Something about Napoleon, indeed. Like, what? Which, again, sounds a little, yes. Does anybody remember what Jonathan is referring to? Do you want to explain further, or can anybody explain further?
Isn't that the one that you're saying, like, there's certain race, like, certain people that are allowed to kill, kind of like something, kind of like a superhuman thing, that they're the ones that can kill because they have the power, they're special, extraordinary, and ordinary
Yeah,
people.
yeah. So, there are people who aren't normal people. They're super people. Okay, let's read. I want to the best of my ability, I want to read this section, but let's set the scene. Porphyry. Okay, there's Porphyry. Okay, the police, the head investigator, right? He goes to his house, his apartment. You might say, why in the world would he go there? Well, he finds out from Razumihin that they have collected all the pledges from the pawnbroker lady's apartment. Everybody who left, who pawned something with her. The lady writes their name and the date on a piece of paper and tapes it to it. So they've got a record of everybody who visited her, including Raskolnikov. Because, remember, several days before the murder, he went for his test run, his experiment, and he pawned something, watch, okay, his dad's watch, okay. So, there's proof that he's been there. There's not proof that he was there that night, but there's proof that he's been there. And he wants to know what they know, and he wants to get it back. So, Razumihin says, oh, I'm pals with him. I know him. We can just run by his apartment and just do it all informally, and you can ask, well, what do I need to do to get my belongings back? You know, it's special to me, because there's no pawnbroker lady to pay for it anymore. What's going to happen to all the people's stuff? So they go to his apartment, and this is going to be a real test, right? Because he's face to face with the lead investigator of the crime he committed. And he wants to see if he can play it cool. I just got to be cool, right? So he even goes so far as to start teasing. That is just not good. Start teasing Razumihin about, I don't know, having a crush on his sister and what. And so they can come in laughing and yucking it up. And Razumihin can seem all irritated and everything, so that it looks really real, and it is real, but it's of design. He said, I want to look like I'm so relaxed, I'm just joking with my friend, I'm just coming to this guy's apartment, see if I can get my watch back. There's nothing weird here, nothing to see. So he comes in and he starts off well, but then the police chief says, this recalls to my mind an article of yours, which interested me at the time, on crime, or something of that sort. I forget the title. I read it with pleasure 2 months ago in the Periodical Review.
Wait, so that means that Raskolnikov was like writing articles or something?
Mm-hmm. And he says, my article in the Periodical Review? Raskolnikov asked in astonishment. I certainly did write an article upon a book 6 months ago when I left the university, but I sent it to the Weekly Review. But it came out in the periodical. And it turns out that the Weekly and Periodical Reviews were consolidated. He wrote it 6 months ago. So these are his thoughts from 6 months ago, presumably older thoughts than that, because you would take some time formulating your thoughts before you wrote an article, and he submitted it. And he says, didn't you know that your article, he says, you might get some money from that. Raskolnikov had not known. How did you find out the article was mine? He asked. It's only signed with an initial. I only learned it by chance the other day through the editor. I know him. I was very much interested. Okay, so if you are innocent of all wrongdoing, like, oh, he just thought it was an interesting article. If you are not innocent of all wrongdoing, what does that little comment say to you? I'm checking up on you. I analyzed, if I remember, says Raskolnikov, the psychology of a criminal before and after the crime. The policeman says, yes, and you maintained that the perpetration of a crime is always accompanied by illness. Oh, Raskolnikov, you've been ill lately, haven't you? Didn't you come into the police office and pass out when they were talking about that murder? Is that you? He doesn't say any of that, but very, very original. But it was not that part of your article that interested me so much, but an idea at the end of the article, which I regret to say you merely suggested without working it out clearly. There is, if you recollect, a suggestion that there are certain persons who can, that is not precisely are able to, but have a perfect right to commit breaches of morality and crimes, and that the law is not for them. Raskolnikov smiled at the exaggerated and intentional distortion of his idea. What does that mean, the intentional distortion and exaggeration?
Twisted it.
So he doesn't really say, there's people who can do anything they want. He's going to explain this in a minute. Why might the police chief exaggerate and intentionally distort? Intentionally distort. He's doing it on purpose.
To maybe get him to like crack a little bit more.
Crack him open. At the very least, I'll get him talking about it. And he does. He does. His resume is like, what? What do you mean? A right to crime? Okay. That wasn't quite my contention, he began simply in modesty. Yes, I admit that you have stated it almost correctly, perhaps, if you like, perfectly so. It almost gave him pleasure to admit this. The only difference is that I don't contend that extraordinary people are always bound to commit breaches of morals, as you call it. In fact, I doubt whether such an argument could be published. I simply hinted that an extraordinary man has the right, that is not an official right, but an inner right, to decide in his own conscience to overstep certain obstacles, and only in case it is essential for the practical fulfillment of his idea. And then he gives an example. I maintain that if the discoveries of Kepler and Newton could not have been made known except by sacrificing the lives of 1, a dozen, 100, or more men, Newton would have had the right, and indeed he would have been duty-bound to eliminate the dozen or the 100 men for the sake of making his discoveries known to the whole of humanity. But it does not follow from that Newton had a right to murder people right and left and to steal every day in the market. You can't do anything you want, but if people stand in the way of great progress to mankind, well, not only do you have a right to eliminate the obstacles, but you really have a duty because you can't keep this insight from mankind. Does everybody follow? Then I remember I maintain in my article that all, legislators and leaders of men, such as Lycurgus, Solon, Mahomet, Napoleon, and so on, were all without exception criminals. From the very fact that, making a new law, they transgressed the ancient one, handed down from their ancestors and held sacred by the people. And they did not stop short at bloodshed either, if that bloodshed, often of innocent persons fighting bravely in defense of ancient law, were of use to their cause. All great men really are criminals, says Raskolnikov in his article, because they all break the rules. They overstep. I only believe in my leading idea that men are, in general, divided by a law of nature into two categories: inferior, or ordinary, that is, so to say, material that serves only to reproduce its kind, and men who have the gift or the talent to utter a new word, something brand new. Guys, on the second page of chapter 1. I read this last week, I'll read it again. It would be interesting to know what it is that men are most afraid of. Taking a new step, uttering a new word, is what they most fear. Raskolnikov has a theory that certain people are above the law, and they have a duty to reveal their new ideas to the world at whatever cost. What is the danger in this idea? There's more than one, I'm sure, but what is a danger in this idea?
Thinking that you're one of those people and then doing said things and then being in trouble for that.
Yeah, finding out you're not. How do you know that you are one? Well, the police chief sees this problem, which would be so much easier for me to find with my glasses on, but you guys are patient. Tell me this, says the policeman. How do you distinguish these extraordinary people from the ordinary ones? Are there signs at their birth? I feel there ought to be more exactitude, more external definition. Excuse the natural anxiety of a practical, law-abiding citizen, but couldn't they be branded in some way? For if confusion arises and a member of one category imagines that he belongs to the other, begins to eliminate obstacles, as you so happily expressed it, then, oh, that very often happens. That remark is wittier than the other. Thank you, he says. Raskolnikov says, but take note that the mistake can only arise in the first category. The people who aren't special can only think that they are. Because the people who are special can't accidentally think that they are, because they are. And there's no harm if they accidentally think they're not. Do you see what I mean? In spite of their predisposition to obedience, very many of them, through a playfulness of nature, like to imagine themselves advanced people and push themselves into the new movement, and this quite sincerely. Meanwhile, the really new people are often, very often, unobserved by them, and even despised as reactionaries of groveling tendencies. All right. Porfiry, the policeman, is still not convinced. He says, your attitude to crime is pretty clear to me now, but excuse me for my impertinence. You see, you've removed my anxiety as to the two grades getting mixed, but there are various practical possibilities that make me uneasy. What if some man or youth imagines that he is a Lycurgus or a Mahomet, a future one, of course, and suppose he begins to remove all obstacles? He has some great enterprise before him and needs money for it and tries to get it. Do you see? Zametov gave a sudden guffaw in his corner. Remember, Zametov is a police clerk that Raskolnikov met in a pub and actually went up to him basically and said, you want to know what I'm reading about in the paper? I'm reading about the murder of that old woman. And he says, I'm particularly interested in it. And he says, I need to tell you, or maybe I should say confess to you, that I really have an interest. Just rubbed his nose in it. Zametov is pretty doggone sure Raskolnikov did this. So he laughs, because Porfiry's like, suppose somebody thinks they're one and they need some money. Maybe they commit a little murder and take some money. I must admit, Raskolnikov went on calmly, that such cases certainly must arise. The vain and foolish are particularly apt to fall into that snare, young people especially. Yes, you see? Well then? What then? Raskolnikov smiled in reply. That's not my fault. So it is, and so it always will be. He said just now, he nodded at Razumihin, that I sanction bloodshed. Society is too well protected by prisons, banishment, criminal investigators, penal servitude. There's no need to be uneasy. You have but to catch the thief. And the policeman says, and what if we do catch him? Then he gets what he deserves. You are certainly logical, but what of his conscience? What do you care about that? Simply from humanity. If he has a conscience, he will suffer for his mistake. That will be his punishment, as well as the prison. Prison will be his punishment, and what else will be his punishment?
Regret. His regret, his guilt.
His guilt, his conscience will destroy him.
And that's kind of what's happening to Raskolnikov.
It is. So, you're Raskolnikov. Okay, let's look at some ways. How do we see his conscience eating at him?
Like, it's almost like making him sick, like it's making him kind of go nuts. He's acting and, like, behaving like he normally wouldn't before, kind of thing.
Yes. He's physically become ill. He's acting very erratically, we would say. Do you remember one night, and of course he uses the fever as his excuse, he decides to wander out and go back to the old lady's apartment and he asks where the blood is? And the people there say, oh, we should take him to the police station. And he just wanders off. And then later he's, why did I do that? I hope that doesn't get back to the police. Hope nobody knows I did that. I need to find out if they know I did that. So, physical illness. And he said in his article that the perpetration of a crime is accompanied by physical illness. But if you're one of the special people, apparently you get over it, and you become used to it. So this is one potentially this is his conscience. How is he behaving? How did he behave towards his family when they came to visit him?
Like, he didn't want them to be there.
His poor mother and sister, it said after a 3 years absence, they haven't seen each other in 3 years. And he says he doesn't want to have anything to do with them. It's one of my tabs. But I feel like it's on, okay, that's past where you read this week. So it's not there. It's not there. Mother, sister, he's talking to himself. How I loved them. Why do I hate them now? Yes, I hate them. I feel a physical hatred for them. I can't bear them near me. I went up to my mother and kissed her, I remember, to embrace her and think, if she only knew. Shall I tell her then? That's just what I might do. And how I hate the old woman now. I feel I should kill her again if she came to life. Poor Elizaveta. Why did she come in? It's strange, though. Why is it I scarcely ever think of her, as though I hadn't killed her? Elizaveta, Sonia, poor gentle things with gentle eyes. Do you remember last week he said he went into the police station and he was trying to sort of ingratiate himself with them and chat them up, and he said, and I felt suddenly that I could never really appeal to other human beings' emotions again. I'm not one of them again anymore. And there's something, he said the same thing, yeah, here it is, page 209. He's talking to his family, and he says, he's talking to his sister, hush, mother, or he's talking to his mother, we shall have time to speak freely of everything. As he said this, he was suddenly overwhelmed with confusion and turned pale. Again, that awful sensation he had known of late passed with deadly chill over his soul. Again, it became suddenly plain and perceptible to him that he had just told a fearful lie, that he would never now be able to speak freely of everything, that he would never again be able to speak of anything to anyone. The anguish of this thought was such that for a moment he almost forgot himself. He got up from his seat, not looking at anyone, walked towards the door. He was going to just get out in the middle, just leave in the middle of the conversation. He was so shaken. I can't speak freely to my family. And then that earlier quote, what if she knew? What if mom knew what I did? Would she still love me? I don't know. But I can't ever be open with her ever again. So, is that a conscience? Do you think that exhibits workings of conscience? Yeah, he feels. What would a person with absolutely no conscience? How would they act?
They'd act like fine. Like it never happened.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem is. I'll go chat with my family and go have dinner with them. And so Raskolnikov, do you think? This is an opinion. Do you think he understands that his conscience is eating at him? Or do you think he just thinks he has the flu or something?
I think he knows his conscience is beating him up.
We don't really know. But if he thinks it's his conscience, what does that mean?
That means he's not one of the special people.
Not special. In a good way. Not special. Now, here's another evidence of conscience. This is, we're back to his visit to the police chief, okay? And this is before they bring up the article, all right? And, they offer him tea. Like, oh, Zampatov is here, and, let's have some tea, and we'll just chat. And then I'm going to read a very long paragraph. I need to read the whole thing for dramatic purposes, but he's thinking all this in his head. He's not saying any of this out loud. This is Raskolnikov thinking. The worst of it is they don't disguise it. They don't care to stand on ceremony. And how if you didn't know me at all? Did you come to talk to Nikodem Fomich about me? So they don't care to hide that they're tracking me like a pack of dogs. They simply spit in my face. He was shaking with rage. Come, strike me openly. Don't play with me like a cat with a mouse. It's hardly civil, Porfiry Petrovitch, but perhaps I won't allow it. I shall get up and throw the whole truth in your ugly faces and see how I despise you. He could hardly breathe. And what if it's only my fancy? What if I am mistaken, and through inexperience I get angry and don't keep up my nasty part? Perhaps it's all unintentional. All their phrases are the usual ones, but there's something about them. It all might be said, but there is something. Why did he say bluntly, with her? Why did Zametov add that I spoke artfully? Why do they speak in that tone? Yes, the tone. Razumihin is sitting here. Why does he see nothing? That innocent blockhead never does see anything. Oh, feverish again. Did Porfiry wink at me just now? Of course, it's nonsense. What could he wink for? Are they trying to upset my nerves? Or are they teasing me? Either it's all fancy or they know. Even Zametov is rude. Is Zametov rude? Zametov has changed his mind. I foresaw he would change his mind. He's at home here. It's my first visit. Porfiry does not consider him a visitor. Sits with his back to him. They're thick as thieves, no doubt, over me. Not a doubt they were talking about me before we came in. Do they know about the flat? Oh, if only they'd make haste. When I said that I ran away to take a flat, he let it pass. I put that in cleverly about a flat, maybe of use afterwards. Delirious indeed. Ha! He knows all about last night. He didn't even know of my mother's arrival. The hag had written the date on in pencil. You are wrong. You won't catch me. There are no facts. It's all supposition. You produce facts. The flat isn't even a fact, but delirium. I know what to say to them. Do they know about the flat? I won't go without finding out. What did I come for? But my being angry now maybe is a fact. Fool, how irritable I am. Perhaps that's right. To play the invalid. He's feeling me out. He will try to catch me. Why did I come? All this flashed like lightning through his mind. He's being rude. Is he being rude? I asked him about the flat, which is British speak for apartment, right? And he means when he went and asked about the blood. Like, do they know about the flat? Do they know? Did he ask me about it? Oh, I mentioned it. They let it pass. All in a moment. He's arguing with himself. Do they know? Do they know? Oh, you should just say it right out. I'll just throw it in their faces. Do they know? Do they know? Did he wink at me? Why would he wink at me? Oh, my goodness, that paragraph. What does a tormented conscience do to someone who feels guilty?
Kind of reminds me of that Edgar Allan Poe poem about the guy who murdered the person who had murdered before.
Yes.
It really reminds me of that.
The telltale heart. Indeed. I can hear it beating. Like, I'm just going to put the chair right over the spot where I put the guy under the floorboards and talk to the cops. Except, what's that sound? What's that sound? It's the beating of my heart. It's the guy's heart. Yes. You should all go home and read The Telltale Heart if you haven't read it. It's not very long and it's very creepy. He has a guilty conscience, as we say. And guys, presumably, we're just going to go on the assumption that none of us has murdered anyone. If you have, please, I don't want to know about it, okay? But we're assuming this is true. But we have done wrong things. There's no one in here who hasn't ever done anything wrong. And so let's pick a very, very easy example, right? Your mother baked a bunch of cookies for a party and said, don't eat any of those cookies, and you just slipped a few, right? Because who's going to know? You leave, and then you come back in, and oh, unbeknownst to you, your mother had numbered all the cookies, or I don't know, had a photographic memory of the pile. And she's like, there are 4 cookies missing. Where am I? Okay. Imagine how you feel. Okay, maybe it wasn't good, but you know what I'm going with. Like, here's what I'm doing. Do I have crumbs? There's a chocolate between my teeth. Oh, crumbs. You know. Did anybody see me? I didn't look down the hall. Was somebody standing behind the door? I forgot to look behind the door before I took the cookies. I wonder if my brother was standing behind the door and he saw me and he outed me. Guilty conscience. If I didn't take the cookies, I was like, oh, that's weird. You know what I mean? I'm perfectly calm. If I'm a monster and I don't care about disobedience, I am also perfectly calm. But if I am normal and I have a sense of right and wrong, I suddenly become very anxious. And this is just a case study of the stuff that flies through your mind in an instant. So I asked you last week if you think Raskolnikov is a good person or is thoroughly bad or a mix. Did we see any evidence this week, in this week's reading, that argues for the fact that he's not a complete monster, in addition to the fact that his conscience is bothering him?
The thing with Sonya.
Okay, Sonya and Marmeladov. Marmeladov has been drunk in the street, run over by a horse and cart, and trampled to death. I mean, he was still alive, and they carried him to the apartment. This is what you mean, right? And he gave them money. Again, he gets a little money. Lutzen, talk about his interaction with Lutzen in a minute, who wants to marry Dunya. Lutzen sends him money, and Razumihin goes and gets him a new suit and everything, and all the rest of it. He goes to the Marmeladov family because the guy's dead. He feels sorry for them. He feels sorry for Katerina, who's coughing up blood, and the little children that are starving, and Sonya, who's become a prostitute, and it's just a bad, bad situation. He gives them the money. Do monsters just on a whim give all the money out of their pocket to a family in need? I just don't feel like they do. Lutzen. Just a refresher. Lutzen is the guy who, as I said, wants to marry Dunya, and apparently let it slip that he was in the market for a poor girl to marry because she would feel very dependent on him, and she'd be thankful and grateful. It's just, even if you felt that way, don't tell it to your future in-laws. Oh my gosh. And remember Raskolnikov's reaction when he read the letter. Oh, that's not happening. She's not flinging herself on the grenade for me to save me, marrying this jerk. Did he react any differently when he met Lutzen in person? No. There's a door, buddy. Don't hurt yourself getting out. Fall down the stairs on your way down. So we got nothing else to talk about. Guys, what would be good about Lutzen and Dunya getting married? How would that be good for Raskolnikov?
Wouldn't he get like a lot of money?
Yeah. His brother-in-law would get him job. He's already given him some money, and there would be more where that came from. He just turned it all down because he can't bear for his sister to live like that, in a marriage like that. Is that good or bad? Does that show goodness or badness? He gave up his own interest because he thought it wasn't good for his sister. But yet he whacked that lady on the head and murdered her. And then poor Elizaveta, who he said he never even thinks about. She was just an accident. So he's got a conscience eating at him. He's ill. He's not thoroughly bad. And I've marked just a second. Let me see what this is. I want to save that for last. Okay, this is the thing I want to end with. I'm going to talk about Lutzen some more. Lutzen comes in, and I don't know, Zosimov, the doctor, is there, and Razumihin is there, and they've been chatting. They've been chatting about the fact that the painter has been arrested for the murder of the old woman. One of the painters in that flat on the floor below, who were running around, fighting with each other and chasing each other that night. So there's a group of them, and what kind of guy is Lutzen? If you had to use adjectives to describe him, what sort of adjectives might you use?
Seems pretty arrogant in his own respect, that sort of way.
Arrogant is pretty good.
You could say like a little like
He dresses fairly well. He seems to assume that people will want to know what he has to say.
It's pretty crafty, I think.
He is crafty. He sort of, he drops little things to insinuate himself into various groups. And he does that in his very first meeting there. He comes in and tells him where he's staying. And he says, it's been 10 years since I visited Petersburg. All the novelties, reforms, ideas have reached us in the provinces. But to see it all more clearly, one must be in Petersburg. And it's my notion that you observe and learn most by watching the younger generation. And I confess I am delighted. Somebody says, what? Your question is a wide one. I may be mistaken, but I fancy I find clearer views, more so to say criticism, more practicality. I like to be in the big city. What do you find in the big city? The newest ideas. A new word, maybe. You find the latest cutting edge attitudes, right? The people, the hicks in the backwoods places. This is how people in LA and New York think of us, right? The idiots who live in the Midwest. What do they know? They conveniently, forget about the existence of Chicago. I'm not saying Chicago should be our model, but we do have a large city in the Midwest, FYI. But also the fact that they just think we're just out of touch with the latest views. Maybe this is not so much anymore because of the internet, you know what I mean, and communication. But once upon a time, it was, if you were from Iowa, it was the epitome of, all right, kind of green, you don't really know anything, do you?
Yeah, that's how, like, so my mom, she did, like, Miss USA, I guess, for a little while, and that's how, like, they were treating her like, you're from Kansas, do you know
Oh,
what
yes,
soap
Kansas
is?"
would be another. Like, do you have indoor plumbing in Iowa and Kansas? Yes, we do.
That's pretty much.
So Raskolnikov and Razumihin start to argue with him, but he keeps going. He says, it's new valuable ideas, new valuable works are circulating in the place of our old, dreamy, and romantic authors. Literature is taking a maturer form. Many injurious prejudices have been rooted up and turned into ridicule. In a word, we have cut ourselves off irrevocably from the past, and that, to my thinking, is a great thing. Okay, first of all, did Lutzen say anything definite whatsoever in that little section? Like, did he name a particular book or a particular idea? New ideas, new works, better literature, more progressive, but he's very vague. Like, Lutzen, give me an example. I have the feeling he might, dunno. In fact, Raskolnikov breaks in here and says, he's learned it off by heart to show off. He sounds like he just learned. There are new progressive ideas in the city, and new literature and everything, and the newest, most progressive ideas. And they tell him you're just speaking in commonplaces. Common words without any real meaning. No, not a commonplace, he answers. And now he's going to give us a specific example. Yay, thank you, Lutzen. Hitherto, for instance, if you were told, love thy neighbor, what came of it? It came to tearing my coat in half to share with my neighbor, and we were both left half naked. As a Russian proverb has it, catch several hares and you won't catch one. Science now tells us, love yourself before all men. And for everything in the world rests on self-interest. You love yourself and manage your own affairs properly, and your coat remains whole. Economic truth adds that the better private affairs are organized in society, the more whole coats, so to say. The firmer are its foundations, and the better is the common welfare organized too. Therefore, in acquiring wealth solely and exclusively for myself, I am acquiring, so to speak, for all, and helping to bring to pass my neighbor's getting a little more than a torn coat. and that not from private personal liberality, but as a consequence of the general advance. The idea is simple, but unhappily it has been such a long time reaching us, being hindered by idealism and sentimentality. Once upon a time, he says, love thy neighbor means if you have some, you share it with them. If you have one coat and your neighbor's cold, tear your coat in half and give them half a coat. It's better than none. What are the new economic and ideas of beneficence tell us to do now, according to Lutzen?
It's like love yourself instead of thy neighbor.
Well, the more prosperous I am personally, the more prosperous my whole society will be. If you're prosperous and you're prosperous and you're prosperous, then we're all becoming more prosperous. And we'll just kind of lift up the poor. It'll get better for everyone. How? Not sure exactly. Doesn't that sound very modern? I mean, considering for a book that's 150 years old, 140 years old, it's like the modern idea is me first. And then, society in general will become more affluent and we'll have fewer and fewer poor people and it will trickle down to them. There's those old sentimental views where I actually am supposed to share what I have with the poor person. Well, that's old. This is an example of a new view, and Lutzen is quite taken with it. And he seems to live it out, doesn't he? Remember, he didn't even pay for his fiancée and his fiancée's mother to get a train ticket to Petersburg. He brought their luggage. FYI, he could do that for free. And they have no money, and they had to buy their own tickets and pay their own way. He doesn't care, because he's helping society by becoming rich himself. So it's interesting to me, we have new views talked about in two different ways. Raskolnikov thinks he's spoken a new word, right? There are some that are better than others. If that's Raskolnikov's new word, what is Lutzen? What is that new word? Raskolnikov says some people are better than others and special. What does Lutzen say? That thing I just read to you about people.
Basically, society doesn't have time to do charity work and stuff like that.
Yeah, because who's special in Lutzen's?
The ones that are already on top are me.
Yeah, me. I'm special. Everybody's special, but I'm only special to me. Do you think there are people like that? Maybe. Okay, so let's try to connect the two. If I'm the most special person in the world, and I mean it in Lutzen's way, take care of number one, as they used to say, right? I amass wealth for myself, and in doing so, I help society, whatever. Then, if something stands in my way of amassing wealth, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
In your opinion, that's a bad thing.
In my opinion, that's a bad thing. So if I can remove that obstacle, I should do that, right? Right? So in Raskolnikov's theory, there were special people that could remove obstacles. It's almost like in Lutzen's theory, everybody is special. However, does he say they can murder people? No. I don't know that Lutzen would, I can murder you and steal your stuff, and I'm helping society, right, by becoming richer. But do you see they both involve overstepping bounds, potentially? I'm going to tell you guys a story, because I'm not making this up, and maybe you know a person like this. I once, first of all, I have to tell you, there's no reason for you to know this, most of you. You're not allowed to take baby strollers on escalators. You're like, now you're intrigued. You're like, what is this story going to be about? And sometimes there's signs, like no strollers, whatever, for obvious reasons, I feel. Although, potentially, I got thinking about this, the ways in which I would take you could turn around backwards and just put the back wheels on the, and just go up backwards. It, some potential problems there. Or you could just put, and you could put the first wheels on and then the second wheel on a lower stair, and you could go up and then roll off. But in general, there are signs, or there used to be, escalators like, no, take the elevator. I knew a lady once, this is back in my stroller days. She's like, well, go just take the escalator. I'm like, you can't with a stroller. She's like, oh, that's only for people who don't know how to do it. She didn't think that rule applied to her because she's smart enough to know how to do it safely. And this was decades ago. And I still, oh my gosh.
Everybody thinks it doesn't apply to them.
And what if everybody thinks every rule doesn't apply to them? No shirt, no shoes, no service. Oh, that's for people with ugly feet. My feet are gorgeous. I can go. I just got a pedicure. I can so go bare. It doesn't apply to. So at first glance, it doesn't seem like Lutzen and Raskolnikov have anything in common, I feel like. But if you start poking around a little bit, shoot. One of them believes something where it's implied that certain rules might not apply to me. Certainly rules of charity don't apply to me. Lutzen's not going to reach in his pocket and plop down all the money in his pocket and leave it at the Marmeladovs. No way. Lutzen will take care of Lutzen, and then eventually the Marmeladovs of the world will, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how to bridge that step, how they suddenly become not poor because I'm richer. But Raskolnikov's, like, you can jump over any obstacle, including murder. And as a matter of fact, not only can you, but if you have something valuable to say or do, you have a duty to do it. It's kind of horrifying, maybe more than kind of. So Razumihin is a good guy. Do we have anything bad to say about Razumihin so far? He drinks. Okay. He's a little tipsy a fair amount of the time. Anything else?
I mean, he can get pretty worked up.
He's pretty hot-headed, maybe. Does he seem to mean well? Do you believe he means well?
Yes, he does.
Does he care for Raskolnikov?
He does.
He really, really does. He runs back and forth to his mom and his sister and then back to him. And he brings, what?
Very energetic.
He's very energetic. And like, he's a dropout too. But he's at least earning a living, translating. Translating German, some sort of like Russian, German, something. So Razumihin gets worked up about this. And, okay, I'm sorry. It's because I can't see. It takes me twice as long to read everything. Okay, so they bring up, they're talking to Lutzen, and Razumihin is asking, they're saying we have a crime wave. Not to speak of cases of robbery and arson everywhere, which strikes me as the strangest thing is that the higher classes too, crime is increasing proportionately. In Moscow of late, a whole gang has been captured who used to forge lottery tickets, and one of the ringleaders was a lecturer in universal history. One of them was a college professor. Then our secretary abroad was murdered from some obscure motive of gain. And if this old woman, the pawnbroker, has been murdered by someone of a higher class in society, for peasants don't pawn gold trinkets. Can't be some poor person broke in, because I'm thinking that it's somebody who knew her and was in the habit of pawning things. How are we to explain this demoralization of the civilized part of our society? How do we explain the fact that all of society, they're just getting worse. People are getting worse. Why do you worry about it? Raskolnikov interposed suddenly. It's in accordance with your theory. In accordance with my theory? Why, carry out logically the theory you were advocating just now, and it follows that people may be killed. Raskolnikov puts them together. If my affluence helps society, then anything that stands in the way of my affluence is bad for society. Raskolnikov sees it. Is Raskolnikov stupid? He's very intelligent, despite the fact that he wanders around in a delirium for most of this book so far. He's not stupid, and he sees the connection. But do you think he thinks Lutzen is one of the special people? So you're just parroting off what you've heard. But what you've heard is a new idea and a new word. Okay, I want to look at the very end of your reading. He really gets worked up after his visit to the policeman's apartment. It doesn't go as well as he had hoped. Not to mention that later, that day or the next day, he's standing outside his apartment, or a guy comes up the stairs, and the porter says, "This guy's looking for you." "Are you looking for me?" And the guy just turns around and walks away. And he follows him. What does the guy tell him? "You're the murderer." And he follows him, and the guy just turns around and walks away. Okay, if you have a guilty conscience, this is not good for it. So he goes back home, and it says he's feverish again, he's shaking, and here we have another in his head. Who is he? Who is that man who sprang out of the earth? Where was he? And what did he see? He's seen it all, that's clear. Where was he then? And from where did he see? Why has he only now sprung out of the earth? And how could he see? Is it possible? Continued Raskolnikov, turning cold and shivering. And the jewel case Nikolay found behind the door. Was that possible? A clue? You miss an infinitesimal line and you can build it into a pyramid of evidence. A fly flew by and saw it. Is it possible? He felt with sudden loathing how weak, how physically weak he had become. I ought to have known it, he thought with a bitter smile. And how dared I, knowing myself, knowing how I should be, take up an axe and shed blood? I ought to have known beforehand. Ah, but I did know, he whispered in despair. At times he came to a standstill at some thought. What do you think he knew before? He said, I ought to have known. Oh, I did know. What do you think he thinks he knew before?
He would eventually get found out.
What?
Eventually.
That eventually he'd get found out. This is one possibility.
You wouldn't be able to handle it.
I'm not able to handle it. And if I'm not able to handle it and I do get found out, then what does that mean?
He's not special.
I'm not special and I'm going to be punished. And I thought I was special and there would be no punishment. I did know. Remember, at one point he was standing in one of his wander around town episodes. He was standing on the middle of a bridge and a woman next to him just jumped in the river. Just tried to kill herself. They rescued her. It's just, I'm done. He stood there for a while looking in the water. Like maybe he was thinking the same thing. What are the options for Raskolnikov right now? We don't know what's going to happen. You've got half the book left. What are some options, Gabriel? It's an option.
Assuming that he's not doing what he's doing, he would come free with police.
You mean just like turn himself in?
Yeah, suicide unfortunately is another
Suicide, turn himself in,
Or out of the country.
yeah, leave.
Or just stay in the state that he is.
Stay in the state. Do you think he can do that indefinitely?
No.
No. What did you say, Jonathan?
I was going to say that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because is just live the rest of his life happy as a clam and go on like nothing happened, does that seem like an option?
No.
It doesn't. That was the option for the special people. Like you just keep committing more crimes, whatever, if you need to. We already know that he's watched somebody try to commit suicide and was standing there looking into the water kind of longingly. He's thought about it. He's also thought about turning himself in. Or he suspects he's going to be arrested and it's all going to be outed. So he asks him this. He says this to himself, I did know. And he says, no, those men are not made so. The real master to whom all is permitted storms Toulon, makes a massacre in Paris, forgets an army in Egypt, wastes 500,000 men in the Moscow expedition, and gets off with a jest at Vilna. He's talking about Napoleon. A real new man, great man who speaks a new word. He leaves carnage in his wake, and he gets away with it.
Sounds like this guy isn't, the author is not really a fan of Napoleon, maybe.
No, considering Napoleon tried to, take over Russia, I don't think any Russians are
Close to
big.
his time, right?
Yeah, pretty close to his time. In fact, Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, they overlap. And Tolstoy's famous, notorious War and Peace. It's a very, very long novel. It's a very good novel. If you like this, you would probably like War and Peace. It's about Napoleon. No, he's not a fan. And altars are set up to him after his death, and so all is permitted. No, such people, it seems, are not of flesh, but of bronze. One sudden irrelevant idea almost made him laugh. Napoleon, the pyramids, Waterloo, and a wretched, skinny old woman, a pawnbroker with a red trunk under her bed. It's a nice hash for Porfiry Petrovitch to digest. How can they digest it? It's too inartistic. A Napoleon creep under an old woman's bed. Oh, how loathsome. At moments he felt he was raving. He sank into a state of feverish excitement. The old woman is of no importance, he thought, hotly and incoherently. The old woman was a mistake, perhaps. But she's not what matters. The old woman was only an illness. I was in a hurry to overstep. I didn't kill a human being, but a principle. I killed the principle, but I didn't overstep. I stopped on this side. I was only capable of killing, and it seems I wasn't even capable of that. Does he, at this moment, believe he really did something horrible?
Based on what he's saying, no. He's kind of like moving his actions like to be not murder, like based on convincing himself that
Yeah.
it's not.
Remember, he said at the beginning, if it were a crime, maybe, but it's not really a crime because she's just a loathsome old woman. Nobody will miss her when she's gone. So it doesn't really matter. And look how fast he goes back and forth. He says, oh, if you were a real Napoleon type, you just let it go. People would build statues to you because you're so awesome, despite the fact that you led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. And then he spins on a dime, right? He's like, well, yeah, but this isn't really proof that I'm not one of the special ones. I just, was in a little hurry to overstep the boundaries. But I didn't really overstep. I didn't really do anything that bad, because she was a horrible old woman. And then, but he's still not sure. He flips again on the next page. He says, what shows that I am utterly a louse is that I am perhaps viler and most loathsome than the louse I killed, and I felt beforehand that I should tell myself so after killing her. Can anything be compared with the horror of that? The vulgarity, the abjectness. I understand the prophet with his saber on his seed. Allah commands, and trembling creation must obey. The prophet is right. He is right when he sets a battery across the street and blows up the innocent and guilty without deigning to explain. It's for you to obey, trembling creation, and not to have desires. That's not for you. I shall never, never forgive the old woman. His hair was soaked with sweat. His quivering lips were parched. His eyes were fixed on the ceiling. What is he never going to forgive the old woman for, do you think? Never forgiving that old woman.
Or I guess like ripping him off is the deal, I guess.
Well, maybe, but what has she done to him even worse? Okay, remember he had a dream in one of his feverish fits that he went back to the apartment and the old woman was slumped over him in a chair? And he just started whacking her and whacking her, and she just started laughing. And she's laughing, and he hears whispering in the other room. And he just hits her and hits her and hits her again, and she's just laughing and laughing. Like, the joke's on you, Raskolnikov. You think you're murdering me, but what's going to happen to you is way worse than what's happening to me. And he wakes up. What has the murder of the old woman maybe revealed to him? We've talked about this several times.
Probably more than one thing.
Okay, give me one of them.
I don't know, like, reveals to him, well, first of all, like, probably that he's not one of these special people. And that he didn't quite, I mean, he says he did, but he doesn't quite know what he was doing before he did it. Like, he's like, oh, I knew, but at the same time he didn't because he got worse.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, just like a few, there's, and
Yeah.
like, he thought, oh, I'll take her money and I'll benefit society with it, but he didn't actually take the money.
Yeah.
So, just,
Has any of this worked out the way he planned?
No.
Not a single thing. And of course, most people would blame themselves for doing the murder and not saying, I'm never forgiving that old woman. The one I murdered. Oh, it's all her fault. Because she's, all of those things that Jonathan said, that you guys said, she's revealed to me that I'm not totally 100% sure now I'm one of those special people. Maybe I am. I'm still not going to give up on that. She's ruined my relationship with everybody. Of course, she didn't do it, he did it. But perhaps we also can relate to this, that when we're guilty of something, isn't it convenient sometimes to blame someone else for it? Well, Mom, if those cookies hadn't have smelled so good, I wouldn't have taken some. That's a little extreme, but some people reason that way. So this is where we leave him in the middle of this book. Is he, oh, just a second, I have one more thing. So we've said we've had the crime. We're having punishment. Just to go back to what I read before, he told the police chief, if he has a conscience, he will suffer for his mistake. That will be his punishment, as well as the prison. Is Raskolnikov being punished already?
Yeah.
He really is. But we're only halfway through the book, so we are unclear what the remainder of the punishment may be. At the very end of this week's reading, another guy shows up at his door. Boy, for a guy who lives in a tiny one-room thing where you can reach the door from the couch, he gets a lot of visitors. And he says, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Svidrigailov. And that is where you're going to begin reading this week. Remind me, who is Svidrigailov?
The old employer of Dunia.
The guy that was the employer of Dunia as a governess for his family, and he was hitting on her. He was chasing her around, and Dunia kept putting him off. And then Marfa Petrovna, his wife, found out about it, and then badmouthed Dunia to the entire neighborhood. She's trying to steal my husband. And it was all Svidrigailov's fault. Who also, by the way, did not ever step up and tell everybody, no, Dunia is innocent. He just let her be smeared. And we also discovered that Marfa Petrovna has died. It was insinuated by Dunia and Raskolnikov's mother, who's not a fan of Svidrigailov, that he beat her. He beat her and she died. Unclear. And this is the guy who is now standing in Raskolnikov's doorway, coming to visit. He's in Petersburg. So is Dunia. And I'll leave it at that. We're going to just go ahead and stop. I want you to read. Where are we reading to?
We just finished chapter 3.
I want you to read all of part 4. And I want you to read part 5 to the end of chapter 4. So all the way up to the end of part 5, chapter 4. That's another fourth of the book. All right? Keep doing your summaries. And for our final class, you know, if I ask you to write a paper on our final class, when are you going to give me this paper? You could email it to me, I guess, but I just don't think we're going to do that. But what I'd really like to do is spend some time getting that reading novels sheet out. If you lose it, let me know so I can print another one. And I want to go over the second level and third level reading. Just kind of talk about how to step back and look at the big picture. And we'll do it orally instead of in writing because we have 2 more classes left. So next time, we have 2 more discussions. So we're halfway through the book, so we'll finish the book in 2 weeks. And
It's
that's,
not a problem to already finish it.
it is not a problem. It is never a problem to read ahead. Always can read ahead. And seriously, if you decide you really like this book, I personally really like Russian novels because they're really long, but the characters are really rich. I spend a long time with the characters, and I really get to know them, and they really make me think because I'm not sure why some things happen or what the motivations are. The most notable Dostoevsky book is called The Brothers Karamazov, and it would be the book we would be reading, except it's longer than Crime and Punishment. It's really long, and I have to probably give us 6 weeks and I just have room, so we're reading this instead. But if you like it, The Brothers Karamazov is the one. You won't be sorry. If you liked Crime and Punishment, you will not be sorry. So, anyway, and Tolstoy also, I really like. War and Peace. I really liked War and Peace. And I read Anna Karenina last summer, which is also by Tolstoy, and it was amazing. So I never am disappointed with a Russian novel. But yeah, we'll finish this. We'll talk about how to read a novel. All right, any questions? I will do my best. Get your papers to me as quickly as you can. I'll do my best. This is a heavy paper week for me. All the junior high kids also gave me a paper. Every single student owes me a paper this week. It's a lot of papers. I will do my best to get through them, but it might be the last, I'll try to get through them, but you guys will be patient with me, I'm sure. All right, you can go. If you're waiting for moms are probably not here yet. We have 5 or 6 minutes till end.